For spin-half systems, we can use these two kets to span the whole two-dimensional Hilbert space and describe the system. These kets are the eigenstates of the z component of the spin angular momentum operator with eigenvalues of h bar half and minus h bar half. We can use these two eigenkets to span any other state of the system as a linear combination of them with coefficients shown by C plus and C minus. To find C plus, we can use the dual version of the plus ket, which is a bra and acts like an operator, and find the inner product with the state psi. For the C minus, we do the same thing, but this time use the minus eigenket. In quantum mechanics, an identity operator can be written as the sum of outer product of each eigenket with itself. It is an operator that simply produces the same ket as an outcome. So, for the case of spin-half particles, there will be two terms because we have two eigenkets. We can use this identity operator written in the desired basis to see how each operator can be written in this basis. As you can see, it gives these four terms for which the expressions in the middle are simply complex numbers. Let's call this complex number a++, this one a plus minus, this one a minus plus, and the last one a minus minus. So, based on this new notation for the complex numbers, we can rewrite the operator in this basis as you can see. These four numbers are the elements of the matrix that represents this specific operator in the Hilbert space of a spin-half system. Pay attention that each of these outer products can be represented using a 2x2 matrix. We can represent each ket using a column vector and each bra with a row matrix or a row vector, and the outer product gives a 2x2 matrix. The three operators associated with the three components of the spin angular momentum in this basis can be written in this form. This is the matrix representation of Sx, this matrix represents Sy, and finally this one is the representation of the z component. In the previous video, we learned how this expression can give us a finite rotation about the z-axis in which the angular momentum operator is the generator of rotation. It means that if we use this operator on a given state ket, it gives the rotated version of the ket. You might ask if this rotation really rotates the physical system. So let's investigate it. When we talk about the physical system, we are talking about expectation values in quantum mechanics. States live in the Hilbert space, but when we use these states to find the expectation values of observables, we are actually talking about a physical quantity. So, to see how the rotation influences the physical system, we need to see how rotated states change the expectation value of an observable like the x component of the spin angular momentum. This is the operator we need to find to see how it affects the state of the system and as a result affects the expectation value. So let's write Sx in its bracket outer product form we introduced earlier. The kets we are using are the eigenkets of the Sz operator, and we know the eigenvalues. Also, we know that Sz is a Hermitian operator, meaning that its complex conjugate transpose, or its adjoint, is equal to itself. So we can write these expressions for the bras to see how Sz operator acts on bras. Now, let's act these operators from right and left to see how they change. Keep in mind that when we use an operator in the argument of the exponential, we are actually seeing it as an expansion of different powers of the operator, and we can easily use the eigenvalues above. Based on the bras and kets these exponentials act on, they get the corresponding eigenvalues, and we have these expressions. The exponentials are now simply complex numbers and not operators anymore, and we can multiply them without worrying about their influence on the kets and bras. And finally, we come up with these two terms. Let me remind you that these two complex numbers you saw as the coefficients can be written like this using Euler's formula. So let's use the Euler's formula on this. We write e to the I phi as cosine phi plus I sine phi, and e to the minus I phi as cosine phi minus I sine of phi. If we factor the cosine, we will have this expression, which is an operator in the square brackets. And for the sine part, the expression in the square bracket is another operator. This first operator is the x component of the spin angular momentum, and the second operator is sy, the y component. So we can write it as sx times cosine of phi minus sy times sine of phi. Now that we have the desired operator in terms of some familiar expressions, let's see how Sx transforms under a finite rotation about the z-axis. We started with this one and found this. So the expectation value of Sx after rotation of the state of the system looks like this. Pay attention that the rotation has taken place on the state of the system, and we are finding how it affects the expectation value of the observables. We can do the same thing for Sy and find this expression. In fact, this is how the expectation value of Sy changes when we have rotated the state of the system about the z-axis by a finite amount of phi. Obviously, the expectation value for the z component must remain the same because we are rotating about the z-axis and it must stay unchanged. Pay attention that we are not measuring anything, we are just finding the effect of the rotation of the state of the system on how it can affect the expectation values. And this is how a rotation about the z-axis changed the expectation values of the three components of the spin angular momentum. These are the values we expect to find if we measure each of them, and keep in mind that if we do measure one of them, we lose information about the others as the system is collapsed into a new state. Interestingly, the expectation values behave like three components of a vector in 3D space under a rotation about the z-axis. It is as if we are dealing with a geometric vector, and a rotation of the state of a system actually rotates the components of the physical system itself in the 3D space. Now that you know how the expectation values behave under rotation, let's see what happens to the state itself. Keep in mind that we are still talking about a spin-half system, and that's why we are using the two kets you can see on the screen to write the identity operator. To find the effect of the rotation on the state, we use the exponential directly on the ket and find this expression. There is a very interesting case in which something surprising happens. Take the angle of rotation to be 360 degrees. This corresponds to a full rotation in the case of geometric vectors, but let's investigate how it changes the kets. Rotating the state ket by 2 pi leaves out two coefficients. We can use Euler's formula to find these coefficients. Both of them are -1 as cosine of pi is -1. As a result, rotating the ket about the z-axis by 360 degrees doesn't give us the ket itself, and a minus sign appears, as if we rotate a geometric vector by 180 degrees, which is very surprising. To get back to the ket itself, we need to rotate it by 720 degrees, twice what we need for geometric vectors. So we are dealing with some new mathematical entities that behave differently than vectors. Now take a look at this and let's find the matrix representation of this expression. We know that the state ket psi can be written as a column matrix with two complex numbers as the elements, and so the effect of the rotation can be understood as a 2 by 2 matrix with the exponentials as the non-zero matrix elements. Also, the outcome is another two-dimensional column matrix. So far, we have learned that when dealing with expectation values, rotation seems like 3D rotation of geometric vectors using the three-dimensional matrices you can see. But the rotation of the state vector itself is different and done using these two-dimensional matrices for which 360 degree is not the identity element. In fact, when we rotate by 360 degrees, we get the state ket with a minus sign, and after another 360 degree rotation, we get to the ket itself. However, for expectation values, this minus sign disappears as we use the ket and its corresponding bra, and the effect of the phase disappears. For spin-half systems, kets can be represented by spinors. This plus ket can be written using this spinor, which can be represented by a column vector, and the minus ket can be written using another spinor. Also, bras can be represented using Hermitian conjugate of the same spinors. This is a state spanned in the basis of eigenkets. We can also write it as a column matrix. The two elements of this matrix are two complex numbers and can be written in this form using the spinor language. In the same way, we can write the corresponding expression for the Hermitian conjugate. We can use Pauli matrices to represent the spin angular momentum operator. These are three 2x2 matrices that, when multiplied by h bar half, give us the operators for the three components of spin angular momentum. Now let's use these matrices to find the expectation value of Sx, Sy, and Sz. Again, we use the identity operator to expand each state psi in the basis we have been working with in this video. By reorganizing the sums, we get this expression. These are the elements of the Pauli matrices multiplied by h bar half. These are the elements of the spinor, and these are the elements of the Hermitian conjugate of the spinor. So we can write the expectation value of each of the components of the spin angular momentum as a multiplication of h bar half, chi dagger, the corresponding Pauli matrix, and chi. Now we wonder how we can represent a rotation in terms of Pauli matrices and these spinors. This is the general expression for a finite rotation about axis n. In terms of the Pauli matrices, it can be written in this form, for which, instead of S, we have used h bar half sigma. But what is this exactly? Sigma is an ordered triple of Pauli matrices. It is not an ordinary vector but an operator vector, a kind of vector with its components as operators. And n hat is a unit vector which is the axis of rotation. So this symbol is a Hermitian operator that acts on spinors exactly like Pauli matrices. In fact, the dot product we are using here is an operator value dot product. Let me remind you the representation of Pauli matrices. So this operator can be written in this form based on the components of n. What if we write n in the spherical coordinates? The elements of the matrix change to these. So let's start finding the eigenvalues and eigenspinors of this operator. To find the eigenvalues, we have to solve this characteristic equation to find the two eigenvalues. They are positive 1 and negative 1 as you might have expected. If the operator acts on the ket plus n, it must give positive plus n. In matrix form, this expression can be written like this, in which we are looking for a and b such that this expression holds. From the upper line of the matrix multiplication, we can write this equation. Let's use these trigonometric identities to simplify it using half angles. Divide both sides by 2 times sine of theta half, and pay attention that we are assuming that theta is not 0 because for theta 0, we are simply dealing with rotation around the z-axis. It gives this expression. By choosing a to be cosine of theta half and b to be e to the I phi times sine of theta half, we can write the first eigenspinor. In the same way, we can find the other eigenstate for spin-half systems. Let's check to see if it actually works in the matrix form. This is the result of the operator matrix on the spinor, and using these trigonometric identities, we can find the same spinor with eigenvalue positive 1, and also for the other eigenspinor, after multiplication, we can see that a minus sign pops up before the spinor itself. These are actually the matrix representations of these two expressions we talked about earlier. Now, let's manipulate these operators to see what happens if we multiply them multiple times. For the second order, we can find this matrix. These two elements are 0, and these two are 1. So the second power gives the identity matrix. As a result, for the power m, if m is an odd number, we are dealing with sigma.n, and if m is even, we are dealing with the identity operator. Now, with this information at hand, we can start talking about the matrix representation of the rotation operator. Again, we start using this expression. Let's expand this exponential using different powers of the argument. We separate the real and imaginary parts. The real part consists of even powers of sigma dot, and the imaginary part consists of odd ones. These are identity operators, and all the odd powers give the sigma dot n itself. Finally, the rotation operator can be written in the form of I times cosine of phi half minus sigma dot n sine of phi half. Pay attention that for the case of 360 degrees rotation, the cosine gives -1 and the rotation operator becomes minus identity, and when acts on a spinor, gives the opposite. This is the matrix representation of the expression above for an arbitrary finite angle phi. So when we are dealing with kets, we might want to use the operator s.n, but when we use spinors, it is more convenient to use Pauli matrices. Pay attention that kets are used as an abstract concept, and in different cases, we might want to use different representations for them. In the case of spin-half systems, spinors are a proper representation for showing kets, and Pauli matrices help us represent operators in this basis.